The fact that there are countries U.S. citizens can't easily travel to may come as a surprise to some people. The U.S. passport is a good travel document, although not as useful as some European passports when it comes to visa-free travel. There are countries that insist on visas for U.S. citizens to travel there. Others require permission from the U.S. government before travel. Let's look at some of the countries that U.S. citizens can't easily travel to. Russia. Ever since the days of the Cold War, Russia has required that U.S. citizens obtain a visa to travel there. It's necessary to apply well in advance at your nearest Russian embassy or consulate. Iran. Even if you get a visa to travel to Iran, the Iranians insist that Americans are always escorted by a government guide. The same applies to the British and the Canadians. China. China requires Americans to obtain a visa to travel there. It's much easier to get a visa for China than it is for other countries. Despite needing a visa to travel there, the Chinese tend to welcome Americans for tourism and business. Ghana. This African country requires U.S. citizens obtain a visa to travel there. This is a reciprocal arrangement as the U.S. requires Ghanaian citizens to get a visa to travel to the U.S. North Korea. There are not many Americans rushing to go to North Korea. Anyone who wants to travel there will need a visa from North Korea. They'll also need permission from the U.S. government to travel to the Asian Hermit Kingdom. Libya. Libya requires all Americans to get a visa before traveling there. Anyone who needs to travel to Libya on business will easily get the visa they need. Nigeria. Americans need a visa to travel to this oil-rich African nation. Americans traveling to Nigeria are mainly to visit friends and family and for business. Whatever the reason, you'll need a visa from the local Nigerian embassy. Venezuela. Due to the unstable political relations between Venezuela and the U.S., all U.S. citizens traveling to Venezuela need a visa. Visa-free travel for U.S. citizens was ended in 2015. If you want to travel to Venezuela, you must apply for a visa at the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C. Yemen. U.S. citizens traveling to Yemen for any purpose must get a visa. In the unlikely event that you wish to travel to this war-torn country, you need to obtain a visa from the Yemeni embassy. Algeria. Algeria requires all U.S. citizens to get a visa from the Algerian embassy before traveling. Cuba is one of the countries U.S. citizens can't travel to without permission from their own government. Americans can travel to Cuba, but not for tourism. Cuba makes it easy for most U.S. citizens to get a visa. But the U.S. government have had economic restrictions on Cuba for decades. This means you need a license to travel to Cuba. There are 12 different types of licenses available, none of them for tourism. You can go to visit family and friends or for a business trip. There are also restrictions on where Americans can spend money in Cuba. The U.S. government also recently introduced new rules which attempt to stop Europeans traveling to Cuba. Any European who vacations in Cuba will no longer be able to travel to the U.S. without obtaining a visa. Liberty Mundo helps high-net-worth clients navigate the offshore world. Our goal is to increase your freedom and protect your assets. We do this by helping you get new overseas residencies and citizenships around the world. This means your travel options can never be restricted by any single government. We protect your assets by setting up legal structures that are impossible to penetrate. These structures can include trusts, foundations, and offshore companies. The exact structure will depend on your individual needs. Follow the link in the description to get started on your personalized offshore blueprint.